There's three wise men.
Three wise
men. I'm not wise. I'll just take that one, write her down. Who's first?
Draw straws.
There you go. I'm Shannon. I'm an alcoholic. Man, it's good to be here with you guys. I'm just so you know, I'm wearing my daughter's hood. What do you call these things? Beanie, because Tommy's been making fun of me all week, and it's from a ski trip in 2019, I think. So it doesn't quite fit, but as long as it makes him laugh.
It fits on you.
Thank you. So there's three wise men up here and me, and but tonight I think our topic is facing challenges in recovery. And I wanted to start with a couple quotes out of the big book. In Bill's story on page 14, it says, for if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. Down a little farther on page 15, it says, I was not too well at time and was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. When I was thinking about this topic, two different ideas kind of came to mind, right? When what we do when we're actually facing a challenge immediately, right? There's a couple steps that we're supposed to take, but what happens before that challenge was really what was pulling on me. When we come in here, right, we have a lot of challenges. I mean, life is at us. When I came in, I was threatened to get kicked out of a business that I owned. A wife of 15 years was done with me. She was ready to separate. Legal troubles because I had borrowed her car and totaled it, and ended up spending a night in the clink.
Borrowed.
Yeah, I borrowed it.
Not stolen.
Not stolen. She knew where it was. Anyways, we were. I spent about 2.5 years trying to get sober, and had been to treatment a couple times, and had this whole. I did a lot of drugs as well, so I'm like struggling in my head. I don't feel like I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict, and I had no idea there's really no difference. And then I used accelerants and whatnot just to control and enjoy my drinking. However, we had some trials, and we were having some wine. I know it sounds manly on the porch, and we got in a fight. I don't think she knew we were in a fight, but we were in a fight, and so that's when I borrowed her car to go get some accelerants, and was pretty upset and ran a stop sign on purpose, and then was coming up on a red light, and I ran that on purpose, and I failed to look both ways and T-boned the car. So anyways, when I get out of that, right. Hunter was my first sponsor, and he'd been trying to sponsor me for several months, and I called him when I got out of jail. I was like, "You're not gonna believe what happened last night," and he's like, "Oh, I bet I would. Try me." And so I told him the story, and he laughed. You know, I didn't think that was funny, but I was ready to do whatever he said, not necessarily because I thought it was gonna work, but so I'd have somebody to blame, right, when it didn't. And I heard that this weekend, right? I was under the impression that I was going to be the guy it didn't work on. And so there were a lot of challenges, right, when I first came in. I mean, tons of challenges, all this stuff's going on. And Hunter's my security blanket, right? And so I can tell you in early recovery, get a sponsor fast and just grab onto their belt loop, right? That's kind of how you get through it. But Hunter had been trained in Alcoholics Anonymous. He only had a couple years of sobriety at the time, and he was half my age. So it was very humbling. You got to be pretty beat up to let a 20-year-old run your life when you're 40. But I was out of options, and he seemed happy. And so he's giving me all this stuff that just makes no sense, right? We're reading in the book, we're going through step work. He's dragging me down to the treatment center. I'm crying to him that my marriage is falling apart, and I didn't realize this was an every night thing. I need to stay home and work on my marriage, and he'd do that laugh again, right? And tell me that marriage is over, or God's going to do whatever he's going to do, and off to the treatment center we go again. And we talk about this being a program of attraction, but for me at this stage, it was really a program of distraction. And what Hunter was doing was distracting me from myself. You guys have heard Kent C talk about, when I'm in a room by myself, all my enemies are there, right? And Hunter was my security blanket. God saw fit to put him in my life. He was in college at the time, got out fairly early, around 11 o'clock or noon, and had a bunch of free time. And luckily, I was his only sponsee. So he'd call me and ask me what was going on, and I'd be like, man, I'm dying. He'd say, let's play golf. And I said, I'll be right there. So I'd leave work, and we played a lot of golf together. Hunter was pursuing a career, and he was at the golf academy, and I'd played golf in college, and it was a great mix. And so we played a lot of golf and spent a lot of time on the course. I mean, just thousands and thousands of hours. And so what Hunter was doing was just training my feet, right? And so part of what we do in here when we're facing challenges is what does the preparation look like, right? What are we doing on a day-to-day basis? And I didn't know he was training my feet. It was without my permission, but something was happening, and I was starting to smile a little bit. Nothing was really changing externally. My partner was still pissed off. My wife was still leaving. All that stuff was going on, legal issues, but I was starting to change. And all of a sudden, some of those things weren't a big deal anymore. I was convinced I was going to be the first guy in Alcoholics Anonymous to die of a separation, and just because I wanted to prove something, right? And that didn't happen. It turned out to be a blessing. But I think probably one of the biggest challenges I faced in recovery came in 2024. And we were at Brothers in Our Defects. Tommy and Jimmy were leading. And on Sunday, they did this talk on daddy issues. And, a lot of us have daddy issues in here come in, whether dad was an alcoholic or he beat us, whatever. And that wasn't my story, but I was really touched by the talk because I had a great relationship with my dad, but my parents lived an hour away, and I barely saw him, and so I was kind of convicted to just start spending some time with him once a week, go over there, dinner, whatever. Life's busy, but you don't get that time back. And so Hunter and I were running sound for this conference, so we kind of pack everything up, and I've got this new conviction in my head, and I look at my phone, and my mom's texting me. She's like, Dad's in the hospital again. I just thought you should know. And I was like, well, I guess we're going to Lakeland today. And so went home, dropped all the stuff off, drove out there, and this started a 2-week period where he had been in the hospital a couple times. He had some cancer the year before, but he had gotten a clean bill of health in August, and his lungs were filling up with fluid, and they kept pumping his lungs like every couple days. And I was coming in there. I'd come in there around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd stay till like 4 in the morning, and I'd drive back to Orlando. And I did this every day, and I found out at the end of the first week that he had some other kind of cancer, other than that his other cancer was back, and he had either lung cancer or lymphoma, and and that he wasn't going to make it. He was on this. They took him in to put a chest tube in. He didn't come out, and they put him on a ventilator. Right? Usually you don't make it off those things, and so my mom's can't really show up to the hospital. It's kind of tough on her. Early on when I was there, she was like, "Hey, we put your name. You're going to make the decisions on everything and all this stuff." And I was like, "Whoa." I didn't know it was as serious. I thought I was just coming to visit Dad in the hospital. And so a couple things happened during this period. I read Jesus Calling. It's one of the things I do in the morning. And every single day it was like, thank me in the tough times. Thank me when it's hard. Thank me when it's challenges. Thank me, thank me, thank me. I was like, I get it, God. Okay, I get it. Thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you for all that. And the other thing was I kept thinking about Cliff's story with his dad. And Cliff is literally on my shoulder being like, pay attention. Are you paying attention? Are you paying attention? Right? And once my dad got this ventilator in, we were having to communicate through like a letter board we had created, right? So we would just, I'd talk to him and he'd type out his response. And it was tough, to watch him in that situation. But man, we had some beautiful moments. There were some really cool moments, and I got to just spend some time with him. And about Wednesday of that last week, I came in at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the nurse was leaving. And the nurse was like, okay, we're all good. And the nurse goes out. My dad's just kind of sitting there shrugging his shoulders, and nobody had talked to him yet. And so the nurse walked out, and I was like, Dad, you want to know what's going on? And he said, yeah, And so I told him, I was like, your plasmacytosis is back, but that doesn't cause your lungs to fill up with cancer. They think you've got either lymphoma or lung cancer, and it's at least stage 3. And if they think it's stage 3, it's probably stage 4. And like you could just see his face, right? And the plan was to try to get his lungs better so he could breathe on his own, pull his ventilator out, and we'd be all good to go. They could do a biopsy, figure out what it was. And when I had that conversation with him, I knew he didn't want to do chemo. He didn't want any other kind of treatment. It was a tough year on him with radiation for that other stuff. And so, man, it was crazy just spending those last 3 days with him. They would turn the ventilator off every day. They would see how he would breathe, and then they'd turn it back on really quick. And so they told us that we gotta take this thing out. Like if you have it in there too long, they forget how to breathe anyways, and we gotta just try one day, pick a day, and we're gonna try and see how it goes. And so my mom and I came in there. It was actually Hunter's sobriety day. It was on St. Patty's Day. And we picked that day, and they pulled it out. And he was struggling right away, and then they just make him comfortable, and we had to just kind of sit with him all day. We had basketball on one TV, we had golf on the computer, and we're just kind of hanging out with him, And we get to the end of the day, and I'm just watching that heart monitor, right? You start seeing it go down and down and down, and all of a sudden it's going from 15 beats a minute to 0 to 15 beats a minute to 0 to 15 to 0, and it just flatlines, right? And we're standing around him, and I hugged him and kissed him, and man, it was tough. But I had this thought when I was in there when all this stuff was going on, and I keep hearing Cliff, right? You paying attention, and I was like, damn, this is what they've been training me for 10 years. This is exactly what they've been training me for. This is why Hunter was making my feet move. This is why they were dragging me to all these retreats, dragging me to all these treatment centers, dragging me here, dragging me there, making me do this, making me drive here, making me pick these guys up, making me do all these things, inventory every night. Let me see a 10-step on this. All that stuff, right, was preparation. They're training me, right? We affectionately call this thing man school, right? I mean, Tommy's retreat's called Man Up. And I come in with a lot of old ideas, and man up meant something different to me back then, right? Just man up, right? We're going to be tough. We're not going to cry. We're going to do this. We're going to look out for number one, all that stuff. And that's not what it means today. It's spiritually man up. It's more like show up and just be present. And that thought was so comforting, right? Especially with Cliff on my shoulder, right? Are you paying attention? And we don't have time to get into some of the really cool things that happened to us while we were in there, and it was just him and I. But I got the chance to just assure him I was going to take care of Mom, and everything's going to be okay. And I was back at home with Mom, and he was sending her some texts. I just want this thing out. And I mean, it was crazy. But wait, there's more. He ends up passing, and about a month later, my mom falls and breaks her ankle, and has to get surgery, and she has to go to an inpatient for 3 weeks, and I've been trying to get her to move to Orlando, and so we finally decided we're going to do it. So I got to empty their entire house, 7 15-yard dumpsters. It was insane. There was so much crap. I mean, they should have been on hoarders, I guess. Every time we went to get rid of something, they're like, oh, don't get rid of it, bring it here, right? And they'd make a nice little place for this table or whatever, and then they'd just start stacking crap on it. You know what I mean? You just couldn't, there were rooms you couldn't even walk in. And I wasn't there that much, so I didn't know. But anyways, preparation, right? What are we doing? What am I doing on a day-to-day basis? Because these certain trials and low spots are coming, right? They are absolutely coming. There's a lot of rainbows and butterflies, but man, there's some tough times. And when I get into one of those tough times, right, do I have a network around me? Have I been going to a home group, right? Am I calling my sponsor? Am I talking to the guys around me? Am I praying about it? Every time I mean, everything was a huge challenge in the beginning, right? I call Hunter, my butt's on fire. And the first thing out of his mouth, oh, great. I'm like, great? What do you mean? He's like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. I'm like, all right, finally, I'm going to get some real practical stuff. He's like, we're going to pray about it, and then we're going to see what God does. And I'm like, this kid, right? I need somebody that's got some life experience or something that can help me. And other than training my feet, right, he was getting me out of the way, because when my first thought or whatever it is I want to do about the situation is absolutely wrong, I'm going to blow it up. And he'd say all the time, let's look at the track record, right? And so he was getting me to pause, because God is in the pause, right? And he's forcing me to pause. And so when I'm in the middle of a challenge, it's really important that I'm tight with my sponsor. I'm calling him a lot, and that I'm transparent with him. And the guys have talked about that quite a bit. Preparation, right? What are we doing on a daily basis? You know, our step 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, right? I become spiritually awake. Why do I want to fall back asleep and not be able to deal with something like this when it happens? You know, because if I haven't been doing the preparation when it gets here, and then all of a sudden now I want to call my sponsor and my butt's on fire, like it's not going to help much, right? I better have been taking that action all the way. Hunter also made me go to a lot of these things early on, right? I think we were doing 4 a year for probably 5 or 6 years at least, and a golf outing. And coming to things like this, right? Tommy talked about at Cliff's house the other night. We were talking about what we're grateful for, and his share was, I'm so grateful I didn't settle, right? And what he was talking about was a small radius in Staten Island where guys just sponsor guys, and that's all they do is go to meetings, and that's it, right? They don't come to stuff like this. They don't go outside of that box. And every single one of you in here is leaving that box for something deeper, right? And this is the brand of AA that I was raised on, thank God for Hunter, right? And the pocket of enthusiasm that we have. And that's what Tommy was talking about, that I didn't settle. I don't think I chose not to settle. I didn't have a choice, right? Hunter just handed me, fill this out, pay this, fill this out. And thank God. Thank God for good sponsorship. But it's things like this, right? Are we going above and beyond, trying to get ripped open, coming and getting cracked open, letting somebody have spiritual consent to speak into my life, right? Am I prepared for what's coming, right? And if I'm working with all my guys and I'm doing the stuff I'm supposed to do, I can survive the certain trials on those spots, right? And then it turns into a blessing, right? Not just a challenge. I love you guys. Thanks. You?
I'll go. Terry Jameson, alcoholic. Sobriety dates December 18th, 2001. My home group's Altar Boys in Oklahoma City. And, you know, what? Three wise men. You know, I love that. And there's 4 of us. So, anyways.
They got to figure it out.
I know. We'll take a census, I guess. But anyways, you know, the challenges in AA, you know, I mean, Shannon just, you know, hit home on all the vital factors there. You know, for me, it was challenges once I got here were things that were stumbling blocks before I got here. You know, before I got here, you know, a big part of my story getting here was, you know, I lost a brother. He was 42 years old. He was like Superman to me. He was a MP Marine. I was 3 days out of high school, and he put me to work in the electrical industry. And, you know, I'm running a job up in Enid, way north of the state here at Vance Air Force Base, and I get a call, and they're meta-flighting him to Oklahoma City. His pancreas was shutting down. Mm-hmm. And what that means is they cut you open, and they go in there and they cut the dead tissue away and hope that it'll regenerate itself. But it didn't. And we had to unplug him off ventilator and life support. And, you know, and I remember just holding his hand going, don't worry, I'll take care of Mama. And he squeezed it, you know, and he passed. And, you know, then boom, I'm right back up on the job site. I really didn't have time to really process that, you know, and I'm staying up in a hotel room up there 4 nights a week, working 4 10s, coming home. And, you know, and it just, you go through all that process. You know, that's really, you know, besides my grandmother, that was the big one I've lost. And, you know, that one didn't cut my knees out, yanked the carpet out from underneath me, more or less. It came a year, 10 months later, I'm working a job site, and I get a phone call from my little sister, and she's just hysterical. And she's, you know, Dad's died, you know. And so I get in my truck, and, you know, 90 miles an hour all the way to my dad's house. And my dad only lived a mile away from me. And by this time, I was married. I was 27 when my brother died, and I was like 27, and then I was 28, 20. I don't know. I was under 30. I got married when I was 27, and but 10 months later, my dad died. My little sister's calling. I get over there. And it was just a weird vibe, and I don't know why it was a weird vibe to me, but it's there's a cop, you couldn't go back to the body till the coroner got there. My stepmom, her cousin's there. Never seen this woman in my life, and I'm wanting to know who, what, where, why, and when. What's going on here? Well, just he had a heart attack in his sleep. That's what it boiled down to. And but that one yanked the carpet out from underneath me, man. I mean, you got these male role models that ingrain these bad ideals in our head that we grew up with, and that's what I was left with. We weren't a church family. My dad owned nightclubs and a small oil and gas production, and he'd been a sports handicapper. I mean, I was growing around not a normal, 9-to-5 parenting. And we always said the Jamesons put fun in dysfunctional. And Cliff's seen it firsthand, when my family gets together. He's coming to pick me up. We're taking a meeting to the treatment center, and we got a margarita machine they bring over to my house, They didn't care I was sober, but, that's just the way I grew up. And, but, fast forward, with a large scar and grief, the motion of grief is just so powerful. It just, I buckled. I just buckled. And I didn't know how to cope with it. The only thing I knew how to do was drink and quit working. I had to add some accelerants to it so I could drink more. And that, affects your job, affects your demeanor, affects your marriage, affects your relationships with the family that's left over. There was relationships with my little brother and sister and my stepmom. There was like a line in the sand drawn there, and I was just like, F it. I'm just going to look out for me. I'm just going to worry about Terry. And for about 4 years straight, I just drank and did whatever I wanted to do. And I went out, my last night drinking I went out on a Monday night. I was just going to stop off at Henry Hudson's and have one beer. And I rode in about 3:30 in the morning. And what happened that night was I left the bar, went and got some accelerant, went back to the bar, I closed it down. Closed the bar down, went back to his house, got reloaded, and in his kitchen window, there was a window above the kitchen sink, and I'm leaning up against this bar, and I'm holding myself up, and I'm seeing a reflection of myself, and I just couldn't stand that guy any longer. I've been avoiding mirrors for a while, and I just knew something had to change, and I don't know if I slept that night or not, but the next morning I got up and I called a buddy of mine, Craig F., that used to come to the Altar Boys, and I woke him up. It was about 6 in the morning. He was logging wells out down in the Gulf off Louisiana, and he answered the phone. I said, "Hey, it's Jameson. What are you doing?" He was like, "I'm effing sleeping. What do you think I'm doing?" And I was like, "Man, I came in late last night. Brenda's all over my back." And he's like, "Man, don't be calm if you're trying to save your marriage." And this is the first time I ever got honest with anybody. I said, "Craig, it's more than that." I said, "When I go out, I can't control my drinking." I said, "I'm just, I gave him a laundry list of things I'm doing." And I said, "And I'm scared." I said, "I don't know what to do about that." Boy, he was rustling out of bed, and he was like, "Well, we got to get you in treatment. We got to get you to treatment." And he started naming off some treatment centers, and I knew some of them, and I was like, "No, that's not good enough. That's the state-ran one. And that's downtown Oklahoma City. I've seen the homeless rolling in and out of that." And then he talked about, yeah, I mean, I'm up here, I think. I'm really down here with catfish. And that's a fish in Oklahoma, Tommy. And
You're sitting too close.
It's a learning experience, isn't it?
But anyways, he talked about Valley Hope, and another buddy of ours that's dead now because of this disease went up there, and he's heard good things about it. So I get up and I'm telling Brenda I call work, and I called insurance first. They accepted it. I called that Valley Hope back. They accepted my insurance. They had an open bed. Only thing I had left to do was go talk to the boss, because I still kind of wondered this. I've only been at this job like 10 months. I was the new outside salesman for a nationwide electrical contracting company. And anyways, but I go meet with the general manager, and I tell him what's going on. And he just said, man, he was so cool about it. He said, go get well, your job will be here when you get back. And I set a record for sales while I was in treatment for that branch, you know. That was just God looking out for me already, and I didn't even know it. But, you know, I do my time there, and you know, and that was, I remember Nora was my counselor. Tony, where's Tony? Raise your hand. You had Melissa, right? Yeah, she was still there. And she goes, you know, you go through all this small groups and stuff, and you know, and you meet with your counselor, and she goes, I think you got an impulsive disorder. And I was like, well, yeah, you can be around me about 3 minutes and diagnose that. But she goes, I think you got some abandonment issues. And I was like, okay, let's expand on that a little bit. And she just started naming off all this, you know, childhood stuff, and you know, the two significant losses back to back. And you know, and she talked about, you know, the spirituality of recovery and stuff. And you know, and I still wasn't, you know, 100% on that. But you know, I listened, and I get out of there, and Craig had me set up with some guys pick me up on a Friday night, took me to a meeting. Another guy picked me up Saturday night, took me to a meeting. And then a week later, I got to meet Buddy T. And that was Craig's sponsor, and he agreed to work with me. As it was supposed to be temporary, but it lasted 8 years. But you know, Buddy walked me through the steps, and he gave me an adequate program. I mean, he gave me an adequate presentation of this program. And we went through the whole big book. Where it said read, we read. Where it said pray, pray. When it said write, we wrote. And you know, and I couldn't have asked for a better first sponsor to walk me through the program. We ended up just moving right down the street here at the Seminole. But anyways, it wasn't a month sober. Let's see, December 18th, so less than 60 days. My dad and his brother, my Uncle Delbert, they were business partners all through my whole childhood. And them two were brothers, and them two married two sisters. So we had a tight-knit family, to say the least. It kind of sounds like some Staten Island stuff, doesn't it? You know? But you know, that's awful close, you know, in lineage there. But I'm pulling up to and I'm sitting in the parking lot, and my phone rings of my let's see, what was that? That was my Tuesday night meeting, the Way Out group, and I get a phone call, and my uncle had a massive heart attack, and he died. And so I called my wife, and I said, man, Uncle Delbert just passed away. And she goes, come home, because she knew what that trigger meant, and based on my track record. And I said, no, I think I'm going to go in here and see what these people got to say about that. And I remember I was walking up to the front door of the church to go to that meeting, and a guy named Chuck Collins, and he was a big man. He even that double wide, that door and a half way opening over there, he'd almost fill that up. He was a huge guy, and he was from south side of Chicago. And he says, how you doing, kid? And I said, man, not good. I said, I just found out my uncle died. And he goes, well, let's go in here and talk about that. And we went in this little children's, it was the kids' library. And, you know, we're sitting in those little miniature school chairs. And I mean, and he's huge, and, you know, and his knees are up like that almost. But man, you know, he took that time to explain to me that, you know, I didn't have to repeat those same actions that I did before that got me into AA. That, you know, it suggested that, you know, we share this with somebody, we look at the big book and find where, you know, that this applies to it, and we seek God for an answer for that. And, you know, I wasn't real big on this God thing yet. I still kind of halfway thought, you know, AA was a cult. But, you know, I was willing to trust that process. I was willing to try something different in this, you know, in this troubled time. And I got through it, and, you know, we did, you know, that was fine. And, but what I really didn't know was there was more challenges to come. But I was like Shannon, you know, I was under good sponsorship. I was running around with a good bunch of guys, hitting a lot of meetings, going to, you know, any conference around Oklahoma. Hadn't branched out like we're doing now. But, you know, but life got good, got real good. You know, and my mom, you know, then my stepdad got stage 4 cancer. And I remember coming back and finding out about that. And my twin sister and brother-in-law sat out in front of our house for like 3 hours waiting for us to get home because there was some bad weather. Had my mom with us, took her down to Mexico with us, and you know, and they hadn't even told my mom yet. And so we go through all that, but all I remember is with my stepdad. My stepdad was my stepdad as long as my dad was my dad, you know, because my dad died when I was 31. And but by then, you know, I was, you know, still 5 meetings a week, GSR of my home group. I was still active in service work. Brenda and I was in a newer home, and you know, and so I'd go over there and I'd, you know, sit with my stepdad. He was an electrical contractor, so he trained my brother trained me, and so, you know, but I'd go over there and I'd anoint, we'd pray over some oil, and I'd rub the oil on his chest. And so it was just, he'd want me to come over because he liked the way Terry Ralph prayed. And I'd sit and pray with him. And man, it was just hard. But, you know, I knew that he saw the change in me already. And he wanted me there to pray with him. You know, and that wasn't the guy that rode into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he passed, you know, selfishly, we encouraged him to go through chemo and radiation, and it just burned him up. You know, chemo's poison. And, you know, he lived 10 more months. But I don't know if I'd have done it again if I'd have known all that. I really don't know if I'd have done that. And he did it with grace and dignity. And he was just, you know, I couldn't have asked for a better stepdad. You know, he let my mom do the parenting, but he would make suggestions. And, you know, we had a couple run-ins, but I always respected them. I never would physically challenge them or anything like that. Didn't always agree with them, but, you know, it was okay. But, you know, the big challenge and I'm just kind of picking the topic grief because that was the big topic that got me here. You know, and the other, you know, and then my mom got sick, you know, but I had a lot of years under my belt. You know, my mom died in 22, so just 3 years coming up. Well, it'll be 3 years this year. But you know, my mom had turned all of her finances over to me. We got her house in a trust, got everything in a trust. And, you know, my mom was diabolical. I mean, that woman had like 9 stents in her heart, had, you know, 90% oxygen, and she'd have to run around the house with the long extension cord, you know, oxygen. But, you know, if anyone wanted her to go to eat Mexican food or go to a casino, she was jumping in the car. And I mean, you know, that woman would go, someone would invite her to go anywhere, she'd go, I'll go. You know, she'd just go. And she just had that zest for life. You know, my mom was just, and she was tough as nails. I always thought I was like my dad. But man, the longer my mom lived, the more I am my mom. You know, I'm a mama's boy too. But you know, she got admitted to the hospital, and she never came home. You know, I mean, back into her home. So luckily, you know, I called Tony Mack. You know, he went through all of that stuff, assisted living with his parents and stuff. You know, we got the greatest Angie's List program right here, you know, because you tell somebody what you got going on, a challenge or something, we're in the referral business, you know. We put you with somebody that's already been through that. And I called my friend Tony, and he helped me, gave me some good advice, talked to Dustin a little bit about it as well. And, you know, but my mom said, and I used to tease my mom, she put bacon grease on everything, you know. And so when she got out of the hospital, she went to stay with my twin sister, and that she was 10 years. She got 10 years of sobriety this year. And my wife and I always prepared to take my mama on in our house, and my sister was like, "No, this is my living amends to her. She's coming home with me." And I just, you know, I let her be her, and I said, I said, you know what this is gonna take? And she was like, it's my amends. And so she went from the hospital to my sister's house. And, my mom was a godly woman. I mean, you know, I didn't go to church until I sobered up. And, I went to church a lot with my mom. But she'd always say, "Now, son," right before she'd have to go get some type of medical procedure, another stent put in, or you know, collaterate arteries, or you know, she had a quadruple bypass, and but she would say, "Nope, God told me I was going to be okay," and I'd roll my eyes, and you know, after about the sixth procedure, she had a direct line to God. I was convinced of that, you know, because she came out of it with flying colors every time. But, you know, I'd go out to my sister's house on Thursday night so they could go to their AA meeting. And I stopped off and got a spiral notebook, and I started asking her questions. Now, tell me about Aunt Thel. And you know, and I was able to sit out there and get chronological order of a lot of family members, the who, what, where, why, and whens behind that. And you know, when it came, we got a phone call at midnight one night. We had to get out there. She wasn't doing good. And you know, my twin sister and I, we had a theme for my mom's care: no regrets. Whatever she needed, she got. She needed a medical assistant to stay with her during the day. We got Queenie to come out there. She was this African-American fit lady from California. She was the total opposite of what my mama wanted. But, you know, she'd take her to a doctor's appointment. They'd go get Mexican food and hit the casino and back to the house in one day at 89 years old. And, but she went out, they did that little route one last time, and it really wore her out. And that was about 3 weeks before we got that phone call. And we went out there at midnight that night, and you know, and she had not life-ending hospice, but she had hospice. But before that, she had fell during the night, so we hired another medical assistant to come through, stay the night with Mom, to help her up and go to the bathroom and stuff if she needed it. And so Heidi was still there when we got there, and then, but you know, she was back there. And we fell asleep, woke up the next day, and I was like, "Sherry, when's hospice getting here?" She was like, "I don't know." And I was like, "Well, haven't you called hospice?" "No." And I was like, "Okay, outside." And I was like, "What's going on, sis?" And I was like, she goes, "I don't know." And I was like, "Are you afraid if you call it hospice, it's real?" She goes, "Yeah, I think it's fear-based." And I said, "It's 100% fear-based, and that's okay." I said, "You know, we got to switch from no regrets to peace and comfort, because Mom's going to need us to provide that for her." And excuse me. And we called hospice out there, and you know, it wasn't 3 hours later, and she had passed. But you know, you people had taught me how to lean in, be supported. It's okay to be supported when you're having these, you know, horrific crises in life. And, and so I was able to lean in, and man, I just couldn't have been more at peace when my mom passed the way she passed in the relationship I had with her. I didn't even know what this topic was going to be until I sat up here and really thought, what's a before and after challenges? And that's paid off. I got to go do a lawyers helping lawyers call with Cliff one time. And we rode up to this attorney's house, and this guy had a whole harem of women taking care of him. They were just running around everywhere, weren't they, Cliff? And we were sitting there, and I was co-pilot on that deal because it was kind of his lead. And but this guy talked about his dad died. And man, I just scooped down there on one knee and grabbed him. I said, "Let me tell you what happened to me, brother." And man, before you know it, that was probably the quickest flip we ever had, wasn't it, Cliff? We had that guy loaded up in 30 minutes, packed, loaded, heading to the treatment center. Mm-hmm. And and who knew that I was going to be able to use those same principles on this knucklehead, and just to be that example to others, and to be, y'all taught me how to be an example for my mom. My mom loved Alcoholics Anonymous. She still never could understand, so you can't ever drink again? Moms just don't get it sometimes. But, when it comes to, challenges in life, lean into us, find out who your people are that's been through that problem, use your resources, lean into, prayer, get with your sponsor, the routine. Just get yourself out of the way. Let people help you get through these challenges is what it is. Because, they told us when we first came in here, you never have to be alone again. And so just because you got a belly full of AA doesn't mean that, you still can handle it yourself. We're in the helping business, right? That's what we're taught. We go anywhere, any place where that suffering alcoholic. You still be a suffering alcoholic in Alcoholics Anonymous, So, that's my little spiel. Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, my name is Irving and I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Irving.
Grateful member of this fellowship, and I love being sober. And I'm glad I'm here. And Cliff, thank you. Love you too. And I want to thank the committee because I think the name tags are just cool.
Off the chart.
Thanks, Brian.
With the schedule on the back, I knew where I have to be. But this doesn't say how long I get to talk. I had to figure out the math on this thing. It's like, okay, we're here from, 8:15 to 9:30? So anyways,
5 minutes, Irving.
5 minutes? Well, I really am glad I'm here. And when Cliff texted me and said, invited me to this panel, the first thing I thought about was like, will I be the baby on this panel? And he said, I don't think so. And then, like maybe an hour later, I text him back. I said, well, I'm gonna keep this simple. Should we come? And he said, sure, absolutely, come. And I also have to give a shout out to my travel buddy here, Matt. Give a wave, Matt, because that's my travel buddy. We do these things. Like I said, I'm glad I'm here, and I'm one of those retreat junkies kind of thing. And I'll get my AA commercial out of the way. At least that's what I call it. I'm sure some of you guys are probably wondering what the hell is he doing sitting up there. But I own a sobriety date of August 16, 1991. And for you guys who are, because I talked to a lot of you guys here who are day counting, so I have 12,582 days. And I only know that because I'm working with a couple of pigeons that every morning when we talk, I go, what's your day count and what's your sobriety date? And that's so they can remember it, hopefully that they remember it. So I'm glad I'm here. And I got to Alcoholics Anonymous the hard way. I had to get myself here. The court system did not invite me and say you may have a problem. Your family, my family, certainly didn't tell me I had a problem because I was trying to hide it from them. And of course, my friends didn't tell me I had a problem because if you weren't doing what I was doing, you couldn't tell me I had a problem. But I will tell you that I had a problem, and I also had party favorites that accelerated that process. Crack cocaine. It's the only time I'm going to say it, but I did a lot of crack cocaine. Started with a drink, ended with a drink, and I did a lot of stuff in between. So, like I said, when Cliff asked me to be on this panel, the first thing I actually did think about was our AA literature. I'm one of those. I was raised by wolves when I got here. I just happened to do enough or hit a bottom sufficient enough to end up in a place I could do something about my drinking, which was a detox facility in Alexandria. I'm from Washington, D.C., by the way. I ended up in a detox facility in Alexandria, Virginia, living in the District of Columbia. So when that window opened up, I had to step through. I couldn't think about it. I had to step through. And I ended up in this facility, and I spent 21 days in this facility, and then they told me I had to leave. And I discovered something, I didn't know what it was, but I had not had an obsession or was not thinking about drinking or drugging since I stepped on the double side of those doors. I didn't finish my AA commercial, did I? Besides the Sobriety Day. Well, I have a home group and a sponsor. My home group is 12 and 12 at 7:30. Meets on a Tuesday night in Alexandria, Virginia. And we are a 12 and 12. We read and study step and tradition on the third Tuesday of the month. And I love my home group too, because we're very active and we're very connected to the district and the area. And I have a sponsor now. I'm not one of those, he knows he's my sponsor. Steve McMaster's, his sobriety date is April 1st, 1980. And I don't know how long I've been working with Steve, but my first sponsor did not die. He moved to South Florida. And I was not one of the chosen ones he was going to work with from afar. And he simply said to me in a loving voice, Irving, I'd like you to get another sponsor. And guess what I did? It's not a trick question. I'll answer it for you. I got another sponsor. There's a story behind the story, but I'm not going to tell you because I only got like 45 minutes to speak right now. I'm only kidding. And I got another sponsor. But after spending 21 days in that facility in Alexandria, that detox facility, I discovered something in there that I just didn't know what it was, and I was petrified to leave when they said I had to leave. And like I said, I spent 21 days there, and they gave me more directions to follow of leaving that facility. They said, when you leave here, go directly to an AA meeting. Don't stop at that 7-Eleven and say you're going to get a Coca-Cola, because you're not. They said, don't call anybody up because you don't have any friends in recovery yet. And when you get to that AA meeting, tell them where you just came from, how much time you have, and that you're looking for a sponsor. Now, I don't know why I followed those directions, but I did. But I needed the good orderly directions to find a group of drunks to be put on the spiritual path we call recovery. And I'm so grateful that I did find you guys, guys and gals, because it is, I don't know about your story, but my story is, but for the grace of God, I ended up here in Alcoholics Anonymous because I should be dead. They call us three wise men. I call us 3 wise men and a black man. That's what I call it. You know what I'm saying? I already used the card last night playing werewolf. It's because I'm black. But I came through the door. And they shattered my tiara of uniqueness very quickly because, I came in here, thought I was different. I thought I was unique. And that nurse who took my vitals at that detox facility, because I wasn't quite sure I wanted to be there. You know what I mean? I'm getting ready to step through door number 2, which I had never stepped through. I've always done door number 1, do what you do, go and get what you get. Door number 2 was taking me down a different path, and I was not quite sure I was ready for that. And I had one last fight in me before they handed me over to this black nurse. And this woman could have done anything she wanted with me. And I did my best version of Linda Blair with both hands on my hip like this. And I was scared. I was just simply a scared person. And I looked at her and I said, I'm a gay black man who lives in Northeast Washington. And she let that sit for a couple of seconds. And then she looked at me with the sweetest eyes and said, sweetie, none of that's a requirement to be here. And I said, okay, I got that. So now I'm at that AA meeting where they told me to go to once I left that facility. And let me tell you something, tough love existed. I don't know about you guys, as I said, in 91, tough love existed. After I found this AA meeting, I was greeted by these old timers, and they were all very attentive, and they were very kind, and they embraced me. They all gave me hugs, and after they finished with their little introductory stuff, then they said, now take your ass up those stairs and take the cotton out your ears and put it in your mouth. If we want to know how to get drunk or smoke crack cocaine, we'll ask you. And they wouldn't let me speak for at least 45 days. So all I could do was sit there and listen to what they had to say, because I did keep coming back. That was my mark, because I thought it was code for he's a sick puppy. And I believed it. But they told me to keep coming back, and I kept coming back, and I started hearing things about don't drink, go to meetings. It's the first drink to get you drunk. Keep coming back. Craigie, where's Craigie? What's my favorite cliche?
Yeah, meeting makers.
Meeting makers make it. Bullshit.
What he said without the BS. Anyways, I mean, that's what I heard in that detox. They said, you don't ever have to live that life again. It's the first drink to get you drunk. Stick with the winners. Meeting makers make it. And you know, I was just happy with all of that. And then, like I said, I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started, you know, doing the suggested. They said do a 90 and 90. I wasn't working at the time, so I was doing a 90-90 on steroids. I must have been doing 5 or 6 meetings a day for at least 5 or 6 months. So I was hearing a lot of message of don't drink, go to meetings, develop a relationship with the God of your understanding, and get a sponsor. I did select a sponsor. I selected my first sponsor because he laughed a lot. I wasn't laughing when I got here because I had to figure out how to laugh again. I wanted to laugh. It was ready, but I wanted to laugh. And I was going to a lot of meetings. And when I was new, I heard this old timer say 2 things that have kept me in Alcoholics Anonymous and kept me coming back. The first thing he said, if you do not develop a relationship with the God of your understanding, you will not survive what's to come down the pike. And he didn't say that to put fear in the meeting or me, because I thought he was talking to me. And he just was just giving me his experience, his information. And then the second thing that he said that is, I repeat constantly is, but he said, if you really want to know why you drank, stop drinking. That's exactly what I did. Because I wanted to know why I drank. I didn't want to say anymore, if you had the mother that I have, which was the queen bee of my family. Trust me, I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous because, you know, and I'm from a loving, caring family. I'm from Connecticut. Go Sox. And go Celtics. And you know, I just like, I couldn't ask for more, but when I got on this, my first drink, I'm a child of the 50s, by the way. So I'm drinking Boone's Farm and Ripple. There you go. I know about probably 80% of y'all don't even know what that brand is, but let me tell you, that was my first drink. And like I said, I was the perfect candidate for recovery, I'll say, Alcoholics Anonymous, because I spent most of my early recovery in the other fellowship as well, because like I said, crack cocaine and other party favorites. I love that. But I got on this path of recovery, and I like I said, I fell in with a group of people who were all about our primary purpose, our singleness of purpose, and I call them wolves because they were certainly thumpers. You know, they loved the big book, they loved the 12 and 12, but they were certainly, and a lot of people have talked about this big book here, and I love the big book. In my early years, I'm not going to do it tonight, but in my early years, I would quote the big book and give you page numbers, and I would, like what Cliff does, he can spout off a paragraph or whatever. But that's what I would do, because I'd be sitting in a meeting, they go, Irving, what page is that on? And I'm like, oh, no. And but that's because the people I was hanging around with when I got here. But a lot of this information, and thank you, this Tommy and Harold, and it's like a quick story on where I met Cliff. It's probably been about 11 years now, but we have a retreat back in West Virginia called Step Brothers, and the Thursday night at our fellowship, we would go over John Edmonds' house. He had a beautiful home out in Frederick. And this is where I met the guys from Orlando. I've been chasing these guys since we met, and they go. They're on the go. I would call them and say, "Where are you guys going?" And I would end up where they were at, and we just went to a lot of retreats. But anyways, we were at the fellowship on that Thursday night, and Cliff and I were in the kitchen, kind of like just goofing, just playing around, just goofing. And then I finally had to say to my friend Levi, I was like, who is this guy back here? I said, I don't know him, but we're like, just like, we're getting ready to throw down. But he said, that's the facilitator, that's Cliff. And I was like, oh my God. So that was the retreat at Step Brothers where Cliff and Joe Krogan, I think, were the facilitators. And also Tommy and Jimmy were, I think you did maybe the following year or the year after. But anyway, this is how I know these guys, the facilitators. This is the first time meeting Harold, so I don't really know Harold outside of meeting him for the first time here. But I go to a lot of retreats. I try to do between 4 to 6 a year, and the ones I don't go to, I can't get in because it's full. So, but anyway, but back to this book. It's like when they suggested I get a sponsor, I chose my sponsor again, like I said, because he laughed a lot. Now, the topic of this, I'm probably going to be all over the place because I know I only have so much time, and I want to try to talk to the challenges in recovery because I have had some challenges. When you stick around, life happens. You know what I'm saying? Life does happen. It doesn't stop. It happens. And I'll tell you one thing, that my parents were extremely grateful that I found Alcoholics Anonymous because they recognized the difference immediately through a letter that I wrote them in this detox facility, telling them what I was trying to do. They were just so happy they didn't have to worry again. And then I would start going home to Connecticut because now I'm going home and not making up some BS story why I can't go home because I spent the money on crack cocaine. And you know, I would go home, my dad would keep saying, he said, you're still not drinking? You're still not drinking? You're still not drinking? I said, yeah, still not drinking. And then one visit I went home, he said to me, he said, so how long have you been sober now? And I was like, oh my God, he must see something that I don't see. And I had to go back to Washington, D.C. to tell him what had happened on that visit. Like I said, for me, the challenges in recovery did not happen until my 11th year in sobriety. So that I've had some time to get comfortable with the God of my understanding. I have a big God today. You know, that same old timer said to, I'm gonna say to me because it's all about me because it's, you know, it's a selfish program and I have a fear of drink again. But he said there'll come a time when the only thing standing between you and a drink is the God of your understanding. And if there is no God there, you're going to drink or you're going to use. And that petrified me. So like I said, I invest, or at least I try to make that conscious contact. I've built a routine over the years of going to AA and going to meetings in the morning. The first thing I do when I wake up is I roll out of bed, because I don't get out of bed. I roll out of bed and I say the Serenity Prayer, the 3rd step prayer, the 7th step prayer, the 11th step prayer, which is the only prayer I have not memorized, by the way. I don't know what that's about. Cliff, you can probably help me with that. But I can't, for some reason, I struggle memorizing 11th step prayer. And then I say a couple of those other prayers that I make up because I need it. And, you know, I got the daily reflection and a couple other meditation books. And then I meditate between let's say 3 to 5 minutes. You don't need a lot, but I just need something. I call it putting on my spiritual armor. And then I exit out the door to greet the day. My job during the course of the day is to try to stay in my own lane, and that's based off of pages 86, 88, upon awakening, and then I go through the day, and when I return, it's like when we retire at night. So now getting to the challenges, like I said, the challenges for me didn't happen until my 11th year. And the first challenge for me was, like I said, I spent a lot of time going to a lot of meetings. I'm definitely involved, highly involved. I have a service sponsor. I got a relationship with my grand sponsor. So I'm doing the deal, as they say in AA. And I'm living in Northern Virginia in Alexandria, even though I am a city person, which is why I live in the District of Columbia. My white noise is I need to hear sirens and gunfire when I go to sleep. That's my white noise. But anyways, I get this phone call from my sister, 860. I still panic whenever I get a phone call from that area code, and she doesn't sugarcoat anything. She called and she said, Clarence took his life, which is my brother, and to say the least, it was quite a punch in the gut, and the news just floored me, and I'm sure the floor heard me screech because all I could do was scream and yell, And then I thought about what am I going to do next? And what I was taught in AA when something like that happened was I needed to call somebody. My sponsor was not the first person I called. I called my best friend who was a littermate and also sober. So I called him first, and then I called my sponsor, and then I called my littermates. I have 5 guys that we sobered up together. We're still sober today, going into our 35th year, and that in itself is a miracle. I don't do this thing alone. You don't do this thing alone. But this is what I fell into, and you know that was just the beginning of the loss that my family was going through. That was, like I said, that was my 11th year, so that was like around 2001. So also what was happening at the same time, we had three people, three of my like my dad and 2 aunts were on death's bed, and we were hoping they didn't all go at the same time. This is almost like, because my dad died a week after 9/11. Then the 2 aunts died like a week apart, 2 weeks later. And then that call I got from my sister about my brother committed suicide the April after my father died, after 9/11, on the date that he died. So we had 4 family members, we had to deal with burying 4 family members within like a 6-month window. So I spent a lot of time on the Acela train from Washington, D.C. to New London, Connecticut. That's where I'm from, New London, Connecticut. And I had a lot of time to sit there and just me and God in the train, getting home. No matter where I go, I always connect with AA. I have friends. I say this with humility, but I have friends all over the place. I am, if you can't tell, I am an extrovert to the here. I mean, that's what I do. I go to a new city and I go right and connect with AA, and AA has kept me grounded and centered. So, you know, here I am, I mean, it's just unbelievable, like the losses that when I think about it, is, you know, but for the grace of God, I was by my parents' bed. Both of them died of pancreatic cancer a year apart. And you know, I was there to watch them take their last breath, which was like, it was not fun. But here's where my addiction is alive and well. When my mother was like in her last stages, and the only thing that they could do that we request is they managed the pain. So when they would come in there and they would shoot her up with whatever Dilaudid, whatever it was, but you could see when they put it in her, she would go from this to like. And I would say to myself, damn, that's some good stuff there. I kid you not. And you know, that's my attic is alive and well because, you know, like I said, it starts with a drink and ends with a drink. But I ended up, you know, my father, my mother, my brother, those aunts, you know, I just like it. All I could do was what the old timers told me to do. It's like every challenge that has happened in AA could be put under the banner of living life on life's terms or don't drink no matter what. Now I wouldn't say that to a new guy when they call you up and they pour their heart out to you. Oh, don't drink, go to a meeting. I would never do that. Because there's more than the fellowship or the program is more than don't drink, go to meetings. You know, there is, you know, that powerlessness and unmanageability in step 1 and developing that relationship or coming to believe and then making the decision. How many times, if you've heard Cliff speak, how many times does Cliff say, trust God, clean house, and help others? A lot. And that's what I spend my days basically trying to do. Now I know a few things about staying away from the first drink, which is the first drink that gets you drunk. And now that, because I know a few things, I have to give everything that I've learned away. You know, which is why I come to retreats. I listen to Tommy and Harold and you know, and Joe and Jimmy and Ralph. I mean, there are just so many facilitators that they say so much good stuff. I have to take notes, you know. I have to take notes. I'm just going to read something from him, then I'm going to kind of like wind down because I feel myself gaining momentum. This is probably one of my my favorite paragraphs in our big book from We Agnostics. We Agnostics is definitely my favorite chapter. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. obviously. But where and how do we find this power? This is what I love about Bill writing our literature. Anytime he posed a question, he didn't want you to look for it because he always put the answer right behind it. Well, that's exactly what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. That means we have written a book which we believe will be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, we are going to talk about God. When I work with the new guys and they come in here, they look for that side door, that loophole to get out of. And I'm gonna have a problem with the God thing. I say, oh, good, good for you, because you don't need a God to get sober and stay sober. So they don't know what to do with that information when they say you don't need a God. What you do is you need power. And I'm gonna read this, and then I'm gonna slow down. I think I will slow down. AA is not a plan for recovery that can be finished and done with. It is a way of life, and the challenge contained in its principles is great enough to keep any human striving for as long as he lives. We cannot outgrow this plan. As arrested alcoholics, we must have a program for living that allows for limitless expansions. So when life happens, I can't isolate. I've learned early on, at least I thought I was smart enough to know that I can't fix myself by myself. So when they threw this G-O-D at me, I grasped onto it. My fear was the God that I brought here, I didn't think was going to work here. So I did exactly what the atheists, agnostics, and non-believers did. I developed this relationship with this power, this God of my not understanding, to help me maneuver as the days click over. Now, a lot of days have clicked over, and I'm just extremely grateful for that, because I keep coming back now to continue to learn, because I don't feel like I've hit a ceiling as far as I don't know it all, I don't got it all. But if I keep doing what I'm doing, I feel safe enough that I can say that I'm not going to drink today, and I can go to bed happy, joyous, and free, which is basically what I've been looking for. So, anyways, enough out of me. Thanks again for inviting me, and I hope you guys enjoy the time.
I'm an alcoholic. My name's Keith.
Hey, Keith.
Thank you very much. It's a miracle. 38 years today. I want to thank these three wise men who only left me 6 minutes to talk. That's pretty wise. Not that I'm resentful, but I just look at it as like my life is in divine order, unfolding into goodness. God is weaving a golden thread through my life, and he's given me 6 damn minutes, and I'm going to enjoy it. I want to thank Cliff for asking me. I wasn't the first one, so I was the last pick. He was really scraping the bottom of the barrel to fill this spot. So the guy with 40 years couldn't make it, so here I am. So what a pocket of enthusiasm with you guys. Man, you guys, I've watched from a distance, and you guys have all come to all the meetings. You're very attentive. You listen, and it looks like you're absorbing. And the camaraderie, the fellowship, the love you show each other, that's what I come here for. Hear the experience people share, the bright light in their life go off. That's what I'm after, to see that happen. Because when the longer I've been sober, doubt creeps in sometimes, Our topic is supposed to be facing challenges in recovery. There's a lot of challenges. But the bottom line is, whatever you do, don't take a drink. He just read it. I was going to read that part. Our solution comes from a power greater than ourselves. We got to plug into our power. It's like we all love coffee, right? We can't make coffee unless we plug it into the electricity. So we got to plug into the power greater than ourselves to get the spiritual enlightenment that we're looking for and the solutions that we're looking for. I've been getting a lot of mine through prayer and meditation lately. I retired a year ago, March, and let me tell you, when you retire, you got a lot of time on your hands. Cliff's laughing. He's getting ready to get there. It's scary. This is the second time I retired. The first time, I got bored and went back to work. And once I did that for 15 months, I was like, man, work's a 4-letter word. It doesn't start with W. So you know what word I'm talking about, because you got to do what they say. And but in retirement, you can do what God directs you to do, and you have choices today. So I got in my area, the meetings aren't the greatest. So I met some people down about 30 minutes south of me, said, go to this morning meeting. It's called the Eye Opener. They meet every day, 8 o'clock. And I mean, I would wake up when I got done sleeping. Now I set my alarm for like 6:10, 6:15, wake up, I do about 20 to 30 minutes of prayer and meditation, and then I go down to this meeting, and I get there 15 minutes early, and those people opened their loving arms to me and, welcomed me and would talk to me. And a lot of meetings I go to down in Florida, I'll just tell you this about Florida meetings. If you go there with long-term sobriety and like you pick a chip up for like 35 years, they go, good start. So that's what they tell you. It's a good start when you got a lot of sobriety down there, because they have a lot more sobriety. But these people opened their loving arms to me, and I'm extremely grateful for that. So, they started inviting me to places, dinner, different meetings, and my life has been blossoming because of that. And I just need to continue to stay involved with this thing. One of the biggest challenges I had in recovery was about 15 years, I stepped outside of my marriage. I met this girl at work and started an affair, a year-and-a-half affair, and then I decided to leave my wife. She was married, had a 6-year-old child. I had 2 boys around 14, 16, 17 years old. And I blew up 2 marriages for something that was selfish and self-centered and self-seeking and self-gratifying. Did I call a sponsor? No. Because I thought it was God's will. The delusion. So, got divorced, and it's been a long healing process. Made amends. I just made some recent amends to her because I found out that through my life, through another bad relationship, and through a deep dive inventory, from some traumatic things that happened with my mother. She cut my hand when I was 4 years old with a knife, and the neighbor across the street from me was 42 years old and had a set of 38s, or she was 38 and had a set of 42s. I can't remember which. She asked me if I wanted to have sex. I'm 14 years old. I'm like, well, hell yeah, 14 years old. You know what 14-year-old kid's thinking about? And she kept talking about sex with all his neighborhood boys. And so I said, yeah. So I engaged in that with her. But prior to that, I was going to church. And I was raised in the Catholic Church. And what I heard, if you sin, you're going to hell. And if you commit adultery, you're going to hell. And if you have these thoughts, you're going to hell. And then I commit one of the ultimate sins. I committed adultery with a married woman. And there was guilt there. A few months later, my dad got diagnosed with cancer. They gave him a month to live. I prayed that he wouldn't die. And he died 3 months later. So at that point, I knew God. There was no such thing as God because he does not answer prayers. So I turned my back on God, and it was like 13 years of active accelerants and alcohol. And till I hit a bottom at the end, the last day of my using, those outside issues and alcohol stopped working for me. And I had the gift of desperation, and I prayed for help. And he gave me enough strength and willingness to pull into a rehab and tell them I had a problem. And what they did was sat me in a chair, and they put me on the wall with where the chair was, and right behind me was this poem, Footprints in the Sand. That's why it's on those prayer cards. It was very instrumental in me starting to believe that there is a God. Because in those years that I turned my back on God, he had carried me through my whole life. He was weaving a golden thread through my life to get me to where I was that day to seek help. My life hasn't been the same since. Around 23 years sober, my mother got ill. Well, she was in a convalescent center. She couldn't walk. And she turned blue one day. They called me at work, said, your mother turned blue, come on down. And so they revived her, kind of got her back. The whole family went there. We're talking to her. And she was in hospice at that time, and they didn't think she was going to make it. So they gave her a shot. They put her to sleep. They made her comfortable, And the next day we go back, and we're visiting. I walk out to go into the community room, and I brought my work laptop. I checked something for work, and I see my son walk by the room to go visit my mother. And he goes in there, visits, she's asleep. He comes back, and we're talking, and we all decide to go back to the room. And I was the first to walk in. I see her take a deep breath. I had to go to the restroom. I walk in the restroom. As soon as I shut the door, my sister screamed. That was her last breath. And so that night, I go to a meeting. I know where I need to be. And I shared in the meeting my mother just passed. And they surrounded me. And they loved me. And they were there for me. And the girl I was dating at the time stuck with me. Fast forward a few years later, I'm at my girlfriend's house. And I'm on Facebook. I see a post from Cliff. Rest in peace, Howard P. It was my sponsor. I didn't know he died. Tears were running down my face. That guy changed my life. And that girl took care of me. She knew how broken I was. She wasn't in the program, but God had her there for me. I don't know where the answer's gonna come from God. When I met Howard, I had to pick him up for a convention. Do I have like 7 minutes?
Yes.
I want to know about the tape. I don't want to go over. There's no such thing as doing two CDs for a talk. I was asked to pick Howard up for a convention in Maryland, and I Googled his name. I found one of his talk, and I hit the play button, and I heard this, "My name's Howard. I'm an alcoholic." My very first thought was, oh, man, I don't want to pick up an old man. I want to pick up somebody like Tom or Cliff. Somebody young. And, well, Howard was almost in his 80s, I think. He was in his 70s. And my second thought was, it was a stern thought. He said, you told JJ you'd pick him up. Pick him up. So I never told JJ my first thought. So I picked this guy up. And he flew into Baltimore. And he said, well, tell me your story. I said, well, look, about 14 years old, I just went right to the big deal. 14 years old, my dad died of cancer. He was a weights and measurements engineer at NASA. He's a brilliant man. And he worked on all the Apollos and Geminis. And he goes, I'm friends with an astronaut. I don't think anything of it. And he goes, I'm an engineer. I work for the Apache helicopter design division in Arizona. So I started feeling this bond right away. He was an older gentleman. My father died. I was 14 years old. I needed a father figure. And so I just laid out my life for him. And when I told my dad died, he said, sometimes bad things happen for the greater good of God. And he gave me some examples. And I could see what he was saying. My dad, I just didn't know why my dad died. He was 45 years old. What was his purpose in life? He was dead at 39 years at that time. I was like, what was his purpose? He's like, and it's my whole life after that. Like, I had no guidance whatsoever. You can imagine. My mother didn't care what we did, so we partied all the time. So Howard talked on steps 10 and 11 that weekend, and phenomenal talk. He took us all, like Saturday morning, about a dozen of us into a room and did a 3-step meditation with us. And it was pretty intense for me. And I've done many meditations before that, but this one really clicked and resonated. And so he would breathe in, the power of God is within me. And when he exhaled, he'd say, the grace of God surrounds me. The power of God is within, the grace of God surrounds. And if you think about it, the breath in's giving us life. That's God's power. When we exhale, we give life to plants with the oxygen we give out. Plants take that in, turn it back around, let us breathe oxygen. And so after I dropped him off at the airport, I go home. Well, I'm sorry, let me back up. We go down to D.C. to drive around because he was supposed to go tour the sites, but he never made it. So I took him around, showed him all the sites, and showed him where my dad worked. He worked in downtown D.C. and he's flown to Cape Canaveral and Houston. Was real active in the '60s and early '70s. And we go by in the U.S. Capitol, and all of a sudden he pulls out a cell phone, which was a flip phone, and all of a sudden he takes out his hearing aid, and I'm thinking to myself, what's he doing? We're bonding here. Who's he calling? And he hits the button, he puts the phone up to his ear, and he goes, hello, Buzz, hey, I'm in your old stomping ground. And I don't know what possessed me, but I put my hand like this. And he gave me the phone right away. He goes, hey, a friend wants to say hello. Now, the names I'm going to drop, I got permission to drop these names. They were okay with it. So he gave me the phone. I started talking to Buzz Aldrin, second man to walk on the moon. And I told him all my dad had done for NASA. And, told him a little bit about, he died and all the work he'd done, where he went. And I thank Buzz for all he's done for space. I gave the phone back to Howard, and they said their pleasantries. And he hung up, and I was driving around a little bit more and ended up taking him to the airport. So I go home, and when I heard Buzz, first of all, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, holy crap, I didn't know when he said he knew an astronaut, it was Buzz Aldrin. So I go home. I wanted to meditate on what had just happened. Because still, 39 years, my father, I had no closure. So I started meditating on what Howard taught me. Sometimes bad things happen for the greater good of God. What was my father's purpose? Talking to Buzz Aldrin. As I'm breathing, the power of God is within me. The grace of God surrounds me. And if I had another crop in, I would say that the power of God is within me. The grace of God surrounds me. And as I'm getting quiet and still, there's this voice that came over my head that just said, it's going to be all right. And it wasn't the normal thought voice that we get when we think something. It was totally different. And I knew what was going on. I was having a spiritual experience, spiritual awakening. And then tears started running down my cheeks. And at that moment, I felt the closure for my father's death. Had I told no to Howard when I heard his voice, if I said no to picking him up, I never would experience this. So what's God putting in your life today? What's God putting on your heart? Is it your will or God's will? We have choices today. It's challenging to choose the right choice some days, because if you're like me, I like instant gratification. But doing for others is what this program is teaching us. Having had the spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to other alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. That's everywhere. Not just with people in the program, everywhere. We are out of time. Thank you all very much.